Hello, hello, hello. Stop scrolling, turn on your sound. We have got a really special show for you today, okay? Very special. So make sure, turn on your sound. I want you to be able to hear what's going on today. And please, I want you to share this out as well. So click the share button when you hear what this is about. Today's show is a bit different, okay? So today marks the anniversary. It's 3 years since my mother passed away. And I want to do a show about your creative life, your creative business, and family and friends. And sometimes there can be a bit of tension there in terms of other people taking your business seriously. And I hear this from clients. I hear this, I see it in comments all the time in groups here, here on Facebook and LinkedIn. Where people are talking about they get interruptions, people expect them to be available when they're actually working. People are kind of like, oh yes, like you have this little hobby type thing. Whereas you're there like, no, I am building a business, okay? And so I want to make sure that, you've got some tips around that. And I want to share a very special story that I experienced with my mother, okay? And this was actually quite a turning point in our relationship. So what actually happened was, and please, I want you to share your own stories as well in the comments, okay? So whether this is live and I can respond to you or this is happening afterwards, I will come back and say hello as well, and comment on your experience. So if you have questions or you want to share your experiences, pop them in the comments. So remember, share this out. This is a really important show that I want to get to as many creatives as possible because it's an important message. Okay, so what happened was I was on the phone with my mum. So my parents lived in Ireland where I grew up, and I live here in the UK. And I was on the phone with my mum, and she was talking about somebody who was following a particular career path, a slightly unusual career path. And she was saying, oh, isn't this great that they're getting to follow their passions? At which point I became quite livid inside. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, after everything that I, kind of went through when I was younger, I just couldn't believe that she was saying this. Now, I agreed with her, okay? So it wasn't I disagreed with her. I definitely agreed with her. But I was like, how come she's saying this about this other person? But when it was me, it was a different story. So I want to give a bit of background here. Now, my mother, I'm the youngest of 5 children. So, my mum and dad are quite a bit older than me. So you're talking a few generations. My mum was from a really big family, and, they'd grown up in some really poor times as well. Okay, some very challenging times where there'd been really high unemployment. They were grew up in a small town. So, not as many opportunities as there might be in other places anyway. And so, to her and mainly for my dad as well, security was just such a big thing, okay? And the most important thing was to be secure. So when I was growing up, all she wanted from me was to get a job in a bank or to become a nurse, okay? So in her mind, those were things that would give me security and allow me to have a successful and happy life, okay? In her mind, okay, that was the last thing that I wanted to do, because for me, that I wanted to be an actor. I'd always wanted to be a performer. I'd always wanted to be on stage or on screen. But this was not something that they took seriously at all. And I did do a course, when I left school, but it wasn't the right kind of course. I was very badly advised. I kind of had to fight a bit with my mum and dad to be allowed to do it. And there was no path for me. There was no strategies. I wasn't introduced to people who were able to show me how to be successful in that way. So I kind of went off and did other things. And so it was only later in life that I came back to doing acting and actually, to taking it up professionally. So for those of you who don't know me, by the way, my name is Doyle. I'm a business coach for creatives. I'm an actor, and I'm also a daughter, a friend, a sister, a fiance. We all play multiple roles in life, don't we? So anyway, I was thinking back to those times when I had really struggled and was really had a passion for something, but had no path to follow, and was not given the right kind of advice. And even in, you know, when I had taken up the acting and been doing it, and, you know, bearing in mind, like, at the time that I was having this conversation with her, I think I might have done one commercial. I hadn't been on Coronation Street yet. I just had a couple of small, I was on a couple of times in a small role on Coronation Street. But I had been doing it. I had an agent. I'd been taking proper professional classes. I'd done a lot of work to kind of get myself out there. And, you know, and it was, for me, I was taking it seriously. But they never asked me about it. They never asked how it was going. If I ever mentioned anything, it just seemed to be dismissed. And so maybe you've had similar experiences. And whether you're a performer or not, maybe you've had this with a business and people kind of going, well, why don't you get a real job? Or maybe you're kind of going, well, I want more clients, or I'm you know, struggling to, you know, build the right team around me. And people might be going, oh, what are you talking about? You know, you get to work from home, or you have your own office, or you don't have a boss to answer to. What are you complaining about? You know, so other people, they just don't necessarily understand what it's all about. And so I said to my mother, so coming back to this conversation, I said, I don't get this. You know, when I was younger and I wanted to pursue my acting, you know, I had no support from you. Sorry. And it was, I was quite upset at that. And I'd got to the point in my relationship where I had, you know, I had a pretty good relationship with my parents by this time. I'd kind of gone through a lot of personal development and got rid of a lot of emotional baggage. And that's how I was able to have this conversation in the first place, even though it was a bit upsetting. And so I told her how I felt. And she said, well, she was really kind of taken aback and said, well, you know, because she was doing what she thought was best. And I knew that intellectually, you know, because people always do. But you know what the turning point was, and this is what I wanted to really share with you, is that when I told her about my plans, when I told her about the fact that I could earn money as an actor, that it was a serious thing, that even like just doing a commercial, I mean, okay, they pay a lot less than they used to do. You know, in years gone by, you used to get like 5, 10, or maybe even £15,000 for a commercial if it was a national commercial. Nowadays, it tends to be a lot less than that. You know, the marketplace has changed, but the fact that the marketplace has changed has also opened up all sorts of doors for people. And so, you know, I have lots of ideas for how I'm going to, you know, bring, you know, my creativity and performance into my creative flow business, and things that I can do for myself as an actor in terms of self-producing. I've already done some of that. You know, I've already, you know, written and directed and made some short films. I have some ideas for a series that could be TV series, or, you know, perhaps a web series. I could do crowdfunding. There's so many different ways. And so I was able to, with certainty and confidence, talk to my mother about the possibilities and how this was a serious thing. And boom, it was the mention of the money. But I think also the way I was talking about it changed everything. And from that point on, you know, she did actually start asking me, how is the acting going? You know, what have you been learning in class? Any opportunities, you know? And so I was just thinking about that in the run-up to today, and just thinking about the fact that if you know, when it comes to family and friends, because, you know, I think it's hard sometimes for family and friends to take people to be an expert in something, okay? Usually people respect advice or things that they hear when they pay for it, okay? So, you know, the stranger is always the expert. However, if you have got a solid plan, if you are certain and confident in how you feel about those plans and in how you can communicate about those plans, then I'm sure that you can communicate that to the people around you so that they take what you do seriously and support you instead of possibly hindering you. Even if they're hindering you is they think they're helping you, okay? And I think that's the only way, that you have to have that clarity. You know, there needs to be that certainty with it. So if you don't have that, please please, please, please work on that, okay? Make sure that you have that clarity and certainty and confidence in the way that you talk about your creative endeavors, the way you talk about your creative business. Because if you want to be successful, it's so much easier when you have the people around you supporting you instead of not taking it seriously. Because it'll, you know, it's so disheartening when that happens. And yet, if you change your approach, you know, and it's also about setting boundaries as well. So for those people who do have neighbours or family or friends kind of just dropping in if you work from home, or expecting you to be available at a moment's notice, then when you have a structure to your time and you're able to say to them, oh, well, actually, no, today is my admin day and I must get these things done, or today I'm doing such and such, or this morning I'm doing that, or, well, no, I could only do that because I have these appointments, so I could move this around. But, you know, you need to be treating, if you don't take what you're doing seriously, then how can you expect anybody else to? And one of the best ways to take this seriously is to have plans, to have structure built into what you're doing. Now, I know for people like you and me, you know, sometimes structure can be a bit of a scary thing. It certainly used to be for me. But, you know, the more that I go on, and for myself, for my own business and creative flow, for my own acting endeavors and creative endeavors, for the work that I do with clients, I am telling you, structure will set you free. Okay, so let me know, you know, what are your thoughts about this? You know, have you had similar experiences? Do you agree? Please hit the like button or the love button or whatever to let me know that, you know, your thoughts on what I've said. And please share this out with the people you know as well. You know, and I would like to take this opportunity as well to say, you know, thank you to all the mothers and parents out there. You know, you might not have always done things the way that we would have liked, but, you know, we know you were doing what you thought was best. And if those two things aren't the same, it's up to us to communicate around that, and to help kind of get on the same page. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up there. Oh, hang on, I got a comment here. I had a very similar experience years ago to start a business. My mother didn't get it at all. I really had to take a stand and be firm for her to give me even basic support. Okay, well, great. You know, well done on doing that. And I think that, you know, perhaps you might agree that the more clear you can be on, you know, what you're doing, why you're doing, you know, the plans that you have for that, then the easier then that is going to be for the other person to understand. And you've got to be able to put yourself in their shoes. And that's why I kind of shared about, you know, the background my mother came from. I mean, you know, like everybody worked so hard, you know, in her family, and she worked really hard, and she actually had quite an entrepreneurial spirit, and you know, and that's something I think I inherited, you know, from her, and I'm very grateful for. So I think, you know, let's all have an attitude of gratitude, and also let's put a stake in the ground in terms of what it is that we stand for, and how we're kind of moving forward on that. And make sure, you know, don't be afraid to ask for the support that you need, and to ask for the help that you need to be able to achieve your creative vision and your creative goals. All right, fantastic. I'm going to have to run. Got some other commitments going on, so this is me setting my boundaries with you. However, pop your questions and your experiences in the comments below, and I will come back later and check on that. I'll get a little notification when that happens, so I'd love to hear your point of view on this as well. Okay, so Una Doyle, I'm the founder of creativeflow.tv, so that's my website if you want to go check anything out. I'm also Una Love. That's my stage name from an acting point of view. Yeah, so same time next week. I do the show every Wednesday at 4:30 GMT, so that's UK time. So I'd love you to join me. So if you haven't liked the Creative Flow page yet, hit like, hit the button to make sure you get the notifications, and I will see you same time next week. Have a fantastic week, everybody. Bye.